Good morning, Stellar community, or afternoon, wherever you may happen to be, evening, I don't know, middle of the night. It's worth it to show up for this. This is the first of our Stellar Engineering Talks. My name is Tyler Vanderhoeven, and we're going to be talking about practical path payments today. If you have questions along the way or already have questions, we have two places where you can put in your questions, either on the Stellar events page, stellar.org/events. Click on the practical path payments, and in the bottom right hand corner, there's a little box where you can ask some questions, or if you are tuning in via YouTube, you can just ask your questions there in the chat, and we will get to those closer to the end. The goal here with our engineering talks is to have relatively short and very pointed discussions around specific aspects of the Stellar blockchain. So today we'll be talking about path payments. So a path payment is a means of, it's a payment, right? So if you've ever used payments on Stellar, where you're essentially just passing asset A from wallet A to wallet B, but they receive the same asset. So this is very common. This is the way we think about payments today. I have $1 and I give you that dollar, and we've just made a payment. A path payment is quite different, and I believe path payments to be one of the most interesting and important aspects of the Stellar blockchain. And there's nothing necessarily new or incredibly different about path payments, but what they allow you to do with their very tight packaging, the feature that is a path payment, kind of pulls together a lot of different aspects of payments and order books, and allows you to do things that you really couldn't otherwise do without a lot of headache. So as we start to think about path payments, it really should get your wheels turning on, oh, I wonder if I could do XYZ, or, oh, this really allows something that we hadn't really had the ability or capability to do. So it's this idea of transferring value, not just assets. Um, Understanding and making use of one of Stellar's most powerful secret weapons. A path payment is a payment made through the DEX, the Stellar distributed exchange or decentralized exchange. That probably doesn't make any sense, but let's kind of walk through it a little bit. So vanilla payments, we've already talked about that a little bit. Traditional standard payments simply move an asset from address A to B. Nothing fancy. You have any asset and you make a payment to your friend who will receive any of those assets that you sent them. Nothing fancy. They're very essential, but they are simple, basic, boring. And I think if we only think of payments in that way, we're missing a huge part of what Stellar allows us to do. So in comes path payments. Path payments move your given asset through the decentralized exchange before arriving at the final destination. So we'll walk through some examples of what that means, but essentially, if vanilla payments move assets, path payments move value. And that's fun. That's a fundamentally important thing to understand when trying to think through what a path payment is. That you have an asset. You're not just trying to move an asset from someone to somebody else. You're moving the value of that asset. So whatever is behind, whatever that asset allows you to do, whether that's buying groceries or paying rent or buying a house, or maybe it is the house, whatever that value is, you're how do I move that value to the third party, the other person that I want to pay, as opposed to just moving the asset. So if you have USD as an example here, USD, XLM, or a gold token, you make a path payment to your friend who can receive any one of any asset on the order book, the value of that thing. So I may pay you with US dollars, and it goes through these different paths of maybe a pizza token, which then goes to a gold token, and finally arriving in your wallet as a euro token. This obviously is going to require some order book stuff to make that happen, and we'll take a look again in a moment about what those things are. But essentially, you never hold euros, and your friend never holds USD in this example that I just showed. Never holds USD, but the value of my USD has arrived safely through the asset paths of pizza and gold in that case to in this final payment to you. So you've received the value of my USD. You've just received it in a euro token. So let's take a look at the practical aspect. Again, you might be thinking that sounds interesting, but I don't know exactly how that helps me, either as a user or a developer of an application. So let's take a look at a market order on Keybase. So this is something that is very common in other exchanges where you can just make market orders, right? So inside of our Keybase wallet here, we are going to make a payment. This I recently discovered this. This is quite fantastic use of path payments. I'm just going to pay myself. So most of the time when we think of payments, we're paying somebody else, but I'm actually going to pay myself. I'm going to send other assets. So this would just be the standard payment flow. If we click on send some other asset, I would like to receive US dollars. Let's say I want to get 5, and I want to send XLM. So this is essentially, I'm going to send 107 XLM to receive 5 US dollars. And so this will be a market order that essentially I pay 107 lumens, and I'm going to get in exchange for that $5. So this is a market order that I can use to pay myself $5 without ever touching an exchange. All I did was spend time in a basic wallet interface and am able to receive other assets, any of these assets that I've created a trust line for. So hopefully that will go through and we will receive some of those tokens. Sweet, we've gotten our 5 US dollars and we spent those 107 lumens to receive those 5 US dollar tokens. So fantastic. We've achieved market orders through path payments. We never had to touch an exchange, and that's the beauty of it, right? So an exchange did happen and an order book was touched. I just didn't have to do it manually. It happened in the background through the path payments, right? An order on the order book of the Anchor USD tokens was consumed. 107 lumens were spent on somebody. Somebody had an order out there that said, I'm willing to take 107 lumens in exchange for 5 US dollars. I didn't know who they were. I don't care who they are. I just want to get 5 US dollars, and I'm willing to spend 107 lumens to get that. So the other obvious example is to make a payment to somebody else, and we can use the same Keybase flow to achieve that. Now we've got some US dollar tokens. We can pay. Let's pay our good friend Colton. Send some other assets. Let's see what he accepts. He accepts Bitcoin. Sorry, buddy, I'm not going to give you 1 Bitcoin. But let's see. Okay, we don't want to make him wealthy off of this. And let's use our 5 US dollar tokens. Let's see. We have to send 3.4 US dollar tokens to get to Bitcoin. And it actually looks like it's consuming a couple of different paths. So it's going to go to actually arrive in Colton's wallet as the 0.005 Bitcoin. It's going to go through a couple of different order books, a couple of different order paths to get there. I don't care about any of that, but can you imagine trying to go into all of these order books to actually make this exchange happen? I mean, for one, time would be involved, and so the rate is probably going to be different between all that, but then it's also just very difficult to make that happen. You could do it, and it could be manual, and it could work, but wouldn't it be really nice if all of this could just happen in a single payment, never having to touch an order book, and I can do all of this from the comfort of my Keybase wallet? So we are sending him, oh, too few offers. Looks like our payment failed. Probably we took too long to get it there. We'll try it one more time. Sometimes these payments could fail if one of the order books isn't all that liquid. So I don't know how liquid the Bitcoin market is. I also don't know how Keybase is doing their pathfinding. We'll try this one more time. If it doesn't work, I'll just use my lumens again. Oh. Hey, that time it succeeded. Nice. So an interesting thing here, if we go to Colton's address and we pop this into Stellar Expert here, this is on the public network, we should see, that he's got himself some Bitcoin tokens that we just paid him from our address, and we can even see the pass that went through if we look up this operation. Yeah, so you can see all the trades that were consumed to make that possible. Pretty interesting. But just a very basic example of doing something that would be incredibly complex to do manually, and something that maybe we do sometimes, right? Where we want to make exchanges through different assets to arrive at a final payment. The way we can do that very simply through just the in this case, the Keybase exchange or the Keybase wallet. So last but not least, a quote unquote enterprise example. If we were to go to, I've got a path payment example demo set up that I use to help explain sort of the enterprise idea of path payments. And when I say enterprise, I really just mean all of the pieces. So we're just going to go ahead and create. So we have this market, right? So there are assets where things had to move. If I want to be able to send US dollars, the value of US dollars to my friend and have it arrive as Euro tokens, that requires that there be order books set up for both of those things, both USD and Euros. So we'll need to make markets. If we have a market maker here, we're going to need somebody out there that has USD tokens and Euro tokens and is putting those out on an order book, which can then be consumed, where this path between US dollar to euros can somehow happen, because it doesn't happen magically. It happens off of orders that are already on exchanges, already on the decentralized exchange books. So now we have US dollar and euro markets made. So let's create our wallet and our friend's wallet here with the example again of, we're going to have US dollars here and we want our friend to receive euros. So we're going to purchase with our XLM, we're going to purchase a few US dollar tokens. We'll notice the books over here will start to change. We just spent some XLM to get some euros. So we'll see the books over here. Looks like we just bought some US dollars with our XLM. So we have just under 25 there. And if we click send, it's going to create the trust line on our friend's account and then take the US dollars over to the order book here, turn them back into XLM so that it can go from XLM to euros and then send those euros to our friend. But we never accept euros and our friend never gets US dollar. It goes through the books to get there. And our market maker is the one who receives euro and US dollar and XLM. So we'll click that. That'll create the trust line on our friend's account. Go ahead and create the books. If we look at our books over here, I think we'll see this one change and this one. Yeah, so we've gone through the order books and our friend has received 10 euros. We've spent some US dollars to make that happen. And we can see over here that the XLM value for our market maker has gone up. He's starting to make a little bit of lumen profit. Hopefully, if the spread here is good, market makers can make money off of the spread as users send path payments or use the books to send those path payments. So that's pretty interesting. And so those are three kind of basic examples, but also very powerful examples of how you can use path payments right now. If you're interested in seeing the code behind this, it's open source. There'll be links in the description of this video where you can go and play around with this enterprise example. Our good friend Colton also has a very good document explainer on path payments that he wrote up. So make sure and go and check that out if you have further questions there. So that'll be our enterprise example. And then I'm not going to walk through all of this. If you want to take a screenshot or spend some time reading about this, this is kind of our bullet point list of where the interesting parts are in path payments, as well as just kind of an explainer on why I think path payments are so valuable, and a very interesting use case kind of here at the end Right? I would like to see market makers actually being made from within applications. So the when you switch off from assets being the thing that you want to the value being the thing that you want, when you can actually transact in value versus assets, like why don't in my bank account, why don't I have Canadian dollars and Australian dollars and euros? And well, it's because those things aren't valuable to me because I can't use them, because I can't I can't do transactions in them. I can't go to the grocery store and buy groceries with Canadian dollars. I need US dollars. Um, but once you have path payments, I absolutely can make payments with Canadian dollars because I can make a path payment. And wherever I'm spending my money, I just say, hey, I've got Canadian dollars, but at the end of the day, I would like the payment to be made, to be received in US dollars. And so long as there are active markets for whatever the asset that I hold are, so long as that's valued by somebody, I'm willing to hold that. And so wouldn't it be interesting if an application took advantage of that fact that it's not the assets that are valuable, it's the value that those assets represent, and let's begin to transact in the value. And the liquidity can be created through a volume of users rather than a volume of assets. I guess there still is a volume of assets, but there's no longer this limitation, this localized limitation of I can only use this asset as far as my feet can walk and my car can drive. It's no, I'm willing to hold assets so long as they're valued by somebody somewhere, which is quite interesting. Okay. Obviously, there's a lot more we could talk about, but we'll leave it there for now. We'll answer any questions that people have. And then as you begin to develop or have other questions, make sure to I'm on Keybase and Twitter, so ask questions there. I'm around a lot. It's my job to answer questions and help the ecosystem implement these things. So feel free to reach out. Let's see, we've got one question here: the atomic nature of path payments and what that means. So atomic is really that something happens all at once, that there's not this process, this manual or time-based process of, okay, now we're going to do this, and then in 10 seconds later, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this and this and this. It all happens in one package where all of the pieces, in this case of a payment moving through assets, moving through different order books, they're all happening within a single transaction. So when you looked at that path payment that I sent to Colton, it consumed a lot of different order books that were offering different assets. And so as that value moves from XLM to US dollar, from US dollar to Nigerian naira, from Nigerian naira to euro tokens, or from euro tokens back to whatever asset you want, um, it's doing all of that within a single operation, within a single series of payments. So instead of within Stellar, you've got this concept of ledgers. So every 5 seconds, a new ledger clears. This whole payment is going to happen within a single ledger, which allows the fee structure, I guess, the like how much of the asset, how much of the final asset is the last person, the last leg of the journey. What are they going to receive? That's relatively stable because it's all happening within a single ledger rather than it being spread across. You might look at Coinbase and say, okay, a Bitcoin token is worth X and I've got a US dollar token. And so if I move it through Ethereum and then over to a GUSD and then over to USDC, so long as I can kind of do that quickly, there's a good chance that maybe it's like this arbitrage type thing where I might be able to make a profit, or it might be worth it to do these non-atomic payments. But within Stellar, because you have this path payment technology and all of that chaining together is happening all at one time in a single ledger for that one payment, uh, you have a much greater assurance of the final value that some person might receive, which is fantastic. And it also happens very, very quickly. You don't have to manually go in. You don't have a bunch of different APIs connecting to different exchanges or watching the books and having to cancel or revert something. Um, it all just happens. And as you noticed with the failure, it may have, when I initially look at the UI within Keybase, a certain path might exist, but then when I go to actually make that payment, it failed because one of those payments that it had looked up was no longer valid. The ledger had consumed it during the whatever it was 20 seconds that I was watching, I was looking at it, waiting to make that payment, and so it failed. And that atomic nature also allows a level of security, which is quite good. Can people all over the world use it now? Absolutely. Yeah. So anywhere there are assets, again, you can't just arbitrarily pick some token. That token has to exist. There has to be some level of trades. I mean, again, you saw that payment fail. So at times there will be books that aren't that liquid, that the path is not good, or it's not strong, or you lose too much value. If you actually go to these guides that are listed here, there's this strict send and strict receive, which basically says um, the end receiver has to receive X amount, or the strict send, I'm only willing to send X amount regardless of what the receive is. So there are some safeguards, and if those safeguards don't clear, then the transaction will fail, which is good. Um, but yes, anybody can use it. It's just a matter of, are the assets that I want to send, is there liquidity? Um, are there orders on books somewhere for the path to go through? Which is again one of the reasons that I think this becomes very interesting when users are also liquidity providers, is they're willing to hold assets and put those assets on order books because they recognize that there's opportunity there to make profit off the spread. Again, that's going to be a service-based thing. If a wallet allowed you to do that kind of thing, it might be an interest opportunity. I don't know, but it would be quite interesting to explore that capability or that possibility. Um, but anybody in the world can use it because it's the decentralized exchange. Anywhere where you can connect to Stellar, you can begin sending these path payments and sending yourselves market orders, etc. Why does the Stellar Dex have lower volume than traditional exchanges? That's going to be, um, a first to market type thing, um, as well as the kinds of assets that are held there. Again, when we're talking about liquidity, nobody wants their payment to fail, and so until the liquidity is just kind of like the chicken and the egg problem. Users don't want to use a an exchange where either the prices are bad or the assets that they want don't exist. But then also businesses don't want to build build an enterprise on top of something where there are no users. So you kind of need both of these things to happen at the same time, which is again something that I think is really interesting. Um, when it comes to, is there a way to kind of have both of those things exist at the same time, where users are liquidity providers, um, and both of these things kind of happen at the same time, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a chicken and egg problem, that the chicken is the egg. Wait, that seems like the analogy breaks down, but hopefully you get the point. And it is like the Stellar Dex is becoming more liquid and becoming much more active. It may be on select markets, but it is becoming much more active. I think a big difference is, what is the distributed exchange on Stellar built for? Is built for payments and sending assets across borders, and that's not true of a lot of exchanges, which may be more um, for investments, or even for just, I want to move or store value. Um, it may be speculative, and a lot of it's like first to market. Coinbase is huge for stuff like that, and Binance and others, just by being first to market. So it takes time to build it up, but so long as you have that liquidity and users and applications that are being built there, it definitely happens, and it happens very quickly. And a big advantage of the Stellar exchange is that it's decentralized. There's not one entity that owns control over it, which is why you can begin using it right now. Today, you don't have to go through a KYC process to start using the exchange, which is pretty great. Um, could we do a course on how to become a market maker? Uh, Absolutely. I would not be the person to give that talk, but we definitely have folks internally who could give talks like that. So um, it's one of those really interesting problems that I think we're really only beginning to understand, or to see and explore the capabilities and possibilities. Understanding what does liquidity mean? What is a market maker? Not just traditionally, but what could a market maker be? What do we ultimately need for this thing to work? So that would be a really interesting talk, one that I would love to sit in on myself. Um, would businesses and people use this system, or is there a different platform for businesses? Now, this would be the same platform. Again, we're an API software service. So we provide the software, and then users and enterprises or businesses are going to decide, like, okay, how do we implement this? And the way that you implement that might be on a service-based layer or an API-based layer. You may build a company around the way the path payments work. I think, again, especially in like wallet scenarios, or Venmo or Cash App, type things built on crypto, it'd be really interesting to explore how do path payments work. I mean, just the ability to send cross-border payments through an app would be amazing, but there is an aspect of that. The users need that to be a thing that exists. Um, but then also businesses need to build services that utilize those. And then you also need anchor providers, or this on-off ramp where people can actually move their US dollar tokens and their euro tokens from the Stellar network to their bank so that they can buy groceries. Or there needs to be implementations at grocery stores that are willing to accept those as forms of those tokens themselves as forms of payment, so you don't necessarily have to move into traditional financial architecture. But a lot of that is still exploratory, and I think rather than assuming that we want to build something first for the entire world, like look at the problems that are around you or problems that you see in the world in specific areas and build to solve for those, and almost use that as a test case to say how can this be used and how can this improve the lives of a million people, and then try and solve for a billion people. So building something small first and then exploring that beyond. But yeah, like the functionality of path payments is incredible, both for from a user perspective and then also from a business being able to make money off of markets, liquidity providers. You can also, like, you now have business access to everybody in the world rather than just the West or just where you exist. Like, you can begin to expand those things out for where you can do business, which is quite cool. All right. Well, that looks like all the questions I'm seeing. So I really appreciate you all coming out. Again, if you have further questions or need clarification on anything, feel free to reach out to me on Keybase or Twitter. My username's right there, TYVDH, and I'd love to answer any questions. Again, thanks so much. Stay tuned. Like we do this every 2 weeks. This is the first one, but the 24th, so 2 weeks on Friday, there's going to be another talk. I think Colton is doing it on the usability of Stellar applications. So another very important problem to solve and aspect that Stellar has a lot to help out with. So be sure and tune in 2 weeks for that. Okie dokie. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys later.